Greetings and salutations, everyone. So I have just finished watching Stranger Things Season 3, and I have quite a bit to get off of my chest. Just to forewarn you, I will be going into spoiler territory, so if you have not watched it yet or are not caught up and absolutely do not want to know what happens, please turn back now and save this video for when you have finished this season. So let me just put it to you this way. I consider this season to be, well, kind of a mixed bag, to be perfectly honest. Now, I will go over what I did like about Season 3. First off, the acting was absolutely phenomenal. I enjoyed the character interactions, and they all have incredible chemistry together. And also, the story was very intriguing. I did like what they did with the Mind Flayer and this whole idea of using people as in a kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers type situation where the Mind Flayer was kind of using these people as acting as pods, where they act like pod people in that they really don't have much of a personality and something just seems really off about them. And then when they go back to the layer where the Mind Flayer is at, they end up turning into their bodies kind of like how it is in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where they completely shrivel up, but somehow they become a part of the Mind Flayer. There were some truly great moments in this season. I did really enjoy the scene where they're in the hospital and they're having to contend with a piece of the Mind Flayer, where Nancy and Jonathan are having to fight them off inside the hospital, and that was some really super creepy stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, of course, I absolutely was an emotional mess when Hopper disappeared. Yes, I said disappeared. I don't think he died. I think that he's probably possibly gone into the upside down world, but I digress. But obviously, Elle and Joyce do not know. They think that he's obviously dead, but that whole scene at the very end was very emotional for me, and like I said, I got a bit misty-eyed. However, to be perfectly blunt, unfortunately, to me, this whole story and the character development was completely ruined by just the tone of this season. That was the biggest drawback for me. What this season was, the tone. It was completely all over the place. It's like the Duffer Brothers were trying hard to somehow throw in all of the subgenres of the 1980s into a blender, like as if they were trying desperately hard to pander to everyone who enjoyed 80s movies but had a certain niche. You have some people that are 80s comedy fans, and you have some people who are into the 80s teen movies. And really, it just completely destroyed what the theme was, in my humble opinion, what the theme was supposed to be of Stranger Things. What made the first season so incredible was that the Duffer Brothers were paying homage to the 80s horror genre. They were paying homage to people like John Carpenter and Stephen King. But yet this season, this just came off as nothing more than just pandering to people like myself and people that I know who grew up in the 80s, who love 80s movies. And it's like they were trying to tap into that nostalgic vein and trying to give us that euphoric, nostalgic high. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy a lot of the character moments as like individual scenes. They were fantastic, but if you put them together in this whole season, it just does not work. So my advice to the Duffer Brothers, if there is going to be a season 4, which I have no doubt there will be a season 4, but my advice to them is to just stick with the story, stick with the characters, and stick with the theme, which is supposed to be 80s horror. Sure, there's nothing wrong with throwing in the occasional one or two comic relief moments. But what I'm saying is don't forget about what made the first season so fantastic in the first place, and it was because you were paying homage to 80s horror. I mean, think to yourselves, did we really need the scene of Dustin and his long-distance girlfriend singing the never-ending story theme? Okay, like I said, individually as a scene, well, to be perfectly honest, I thought the scene was rather cringy, but did we really need this in this show? And then, of course, I have to address what I consider the elephant in the room, and I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that are going to be talking about this for months on end, and that is in regards to Nancy's story. Now, let me put it to you this way. I fully acknowledge that sexism was a major thing back in the 80s. There was no doubt about that was a thing. However, did you really have to have a group of 40 something, 50 something year old men acting like 14, 15-year-old childish, immature teenagers? You wanted to convey a message as sexism being a thing back in the 1980s, I don't think the men would be acting that way. You could have definitely gone about it in a more subtle, yet at the same time insidious tone. You could have had these men acting in an incredibly insidious manner, and it definitely would have worked. But no, instead, you just had these middle-aged men acting like ridiculous, immature caricatures, which really muddles down what you were trying to go for. So you didn't exactly do yourselves a favor here if you were trying to portray sexism in a very dark and very negative light. So in conclusion, subjectively, yes, I did enjoy season 3, but taking a look at it from an objective viewpoint, like I said, story-wise, it had so much potential. Character development, there was a lot of potential there, but unfortunately, because of the messy tonal shifts, it just completely ruined the whole season, if you ask me. And I'll say it before and I'll say it again to the Duffer Brothers when going into making season 4, please, for the love of God, do not do any more pandering. What made Stranger Things so special was that it was a love letter to 80s horror. So please, just stick to that. Enough of the nostalgia pandering. I would sincerely appreciate it. And those are just my thoughts on Stranger Things Season 3. If you have seen it, I am curious to know exactly what your takes are. So feel free to leave a comment down below. And thanks for watching. Until next time, dear friends, this is Cynical Lindsay, signing off.